with his agenda. I'm joined now by Senator Brian Schatz, a Democrat from Hawaii. And Senator, let me ask you first, do you agree with the president's lawyer that the testimony submitted by James Comey vindicates the president entirely?
I think it's preposterous. I think if you're arguing that that testimony vindicates your client may be in trouble. You're right, Chris. In your lead-up, this confirms all of the reporting of the Washington Post and the New York Times over the last several weeks and months. And I think on a common sense level, this is becoming obvious. This is exactly what it looks like. You have a president who intervened with the director of national intelligence, with the head of the National Security Agency, and with the head of the FBI 6 to 9 times to basically tell them to knock it off, to stop this investigation. So it's increasingly hard to argue that this isn't exactly what it looks like.
I want to get your reaction to a few parts of this, and this is a particular one we previously reported, but now on the record from Comey himself. The president saying to Comey at that dinner, "I need loyalty, I expect loyalty." Comey saying, "I didn't move, speak, or change my facial expression in any way during the awkward silence that followed. We simply looked at each other in silence." He then said, "I need loyalty." I replied, "You will always get honesty from me." He paused and then said, "That's what I want, honest loyalty." I paused and then said, "You will get that from me." How would you characterize that?
Well, I think he was trying to get the FBI director to behave as though he was a political patron of the president. I don't think it's really unclear at all. Even in Comey's accounting, I thought he was sort of generous to say, well, we may have had different understandings of what they meant by honest loyalty, but I don't think that's true. I think what the president wanted was for the FBI director to kind of understand what side his bread is buttered, and to take care of the president in the way that the president wanted to be taken care of, which was specifically to knock it off when it came to investigating what Michael Flynn was up to.
And so I guess the question to you, senators, what does that add up to? The president requesting the director of the FBI lay off his close aide, apparently, it appears, deceiving us, the press, and the public about that request, or misremembering it, I suppose, the most charitable interpretation, then firing the FBI director when he did not essentially heed that request from the president. What does that add up to you, Senator?
Well, I think I'm going to be one of the last to opine on this, because I think it's really important that we all understand where we're going. Every day it looks more and more likely that members of the United States Senate are to be sitting in judgment of this and other questions. And so I think we ought to be precise with our language. I think we ought to be expeditious and aggressive with our investigatory processes. But I think members of Congress ought to be precise with their language. I will say this. For those who are arguing that it isn't what it looks like, it becomes sort of a vanishingly small island to stand on. It is really difficult to come up with a charitable explanation of what just happened. Whether it meets some legal standard of obstruction of justice, I don't think we're there yet. But I will tell you that it is a lot easier to argue that it is obstruction of justice than it is to argue that this is something benign. You read that memo or that testimony from James Comey, and it's pretty clear what just went on. The other thing I'll add for your viewers, because they don't live and breathe politics, some of them do live and breathe politics, but some of them may have just gotten home, read the testimony. It is beautifully written, it is interestingly written, and it really tells the story of what has transpired over the last 3 or 4 months, and it is shocking.
All right, Senator Brian Schatz, thanks for joining me.